Hello and welcome back to Make the Music. Today I want to give you my top 3 tips for recording electric guitar in your home studio. Maybe some things you've missed, some things you haven't thought about. I want to give my best tips here as someone who's been working in a home studio for 7 or 8 years now and has over 200 videos on my channel about home recording. If you're interested in picking up any of my free guides called the Home Studio Toolbox, you should find that guide in the description box down below. It's 100% free. And like and subscribe to the channel. Help me out, and this shows me that, hey, I want to see more videos like this. But anyways, let's get into the tips for the video here. So first off, number 1, you're going to want some fresh strings when you're recording with your electric guitar in your home studio. Now, you don't have to change out strings every take or every hour or something like that. Yes, I know a lot of pros do that, but for a home studio environment, for something where you're going to be working with, recording things on your own, I think changing out the strings on guitars you use regularly every month or so, I think is a really good strategy just to keep that fresh sound going. I mean, yes, is it optimal to change it out maybe every week or something like that? Sure, but I think when you're recording, and you, like I said, use your guitars regularly, changing them out every month is going to make a big difference. It's definitely going to help with the sustain of your notes. It's going to help your strings stay intonated, right, clean sounding, and just overall give a fresher sound to the DIs, especially if you're going to be reamping them later or running them through plugins. It's a really good idea to keep those strings fresh. It's going to help, especially with bass guitar as well, help with the low end of the note, the sustain of the note, and get the clank that you want. I think when you listen to comparisons of DIs that are like 12 months old strings, and then you have strings that are fresh, the difference is pretty clear. And I think there's a lot of evidence to show that, hey, if you haven't popped new strings on your guitar, I would do that now and then. I'm pretty guilty of this. Sometimes I go a long time without putting new strings on my guitar, and I have to remind myself, hey, every month or so, start going through some of my guitars. Let's find the ones I haven't replaced the strings on and go ahead and do that. It can become laborious, especially for me. I have 8 or 9 guitars in my home studio that I use to replace so many strings, and it can become pretty costly. So like I said, every month or so, think about replacing the strings on your guitar. And number 2, the most important thing is proper setup of your guitar and its intonation. So what is a setup? What is intonation? Well, if you're a guitar player, you probably understand these concepts. But basically, when you're setting up a guitar, you're making it so that the action is set up properly on your instrument and that it's intonated, so that when you play a note on one part of the fretboard and then you play an octave somewhere, or if you slide up to the 12th fret and above, that it's in tune everywhere, and it's in tune perfectly everywhere. Now, on a regular guitar instrument that isn't something like an Evertune, you're not going to get absolute perfect intonation in every spot of the guitar. It's actually impossible. That's what's cool about Evertune guitars, is that they can actually stay that way. You can't really bend them as much as other guitars, obviously, right? Or bend them out of tune or do cool stuff. The appeal of the guitar is, yes, it's going to be ever so slightly out of tune on some spots, and that's cool. That's the whole appeal of the guitar. It's not a piano, right? But if you have bad intonation issues, like if I go real up high and I play some octaves here, it's not 100% perfect in tune, and it just depends on your part and what you're playing and your style of music. But if you're in some technical styles of music where it really needs to sound in tune, or if you're recording a lot of guitars and you're going to be layering them, it's important to check and make sure, hey, have I checked the intonation on my guitar recently? If you don't know how to do that, there's a million videos on YouTube how to do that, or you can take them down to a shop and go, hey, is my intonation in decent shape? Have I not checked that in a while? Also, the action of the strings is going to matter quite a bit. If you have super low action, you're going to get some fret buzzing on some of the notes you play. Yes, it's overall kind of easier to play, but you're going to get some of that fret buzzing sound. And if the action's too high, it can become difficult to play, or you can actually bend the string out of tune when you go to fret some of the notes. So it's important to keep that in mind. Go to a repair shop, look up some videos on YouTube. What is a good setup? What is the proper setup for your guitar? Action wise, I like to go fairly low, but not too low where I'm getting fret buzzing. You have to make a bit of a sacrifice there. And then with my setup, I like to get it as intonated as possible, obviously, especially on the frets above. Now, you may find that you need to maybe do the takes of all your lower parts with one tuning, and then maybe when you go up onto the higher parts here, maybe you need to slightly tune your instrument different. This is very common in the home studio. Don't think there's something wrong with your guitar. This happens all the time. Sometimes you have to change the tuning of individual strings for individual parts. This is not very uncommon, okay? And when you're recording guitar in your home studio, especially for modern music, you want it to sound in tune. Don't be afraid to go, hey, I'm gonna play all these parts here, and then I'm gonna record the leads, even if you're on different frets, okay? Maybe if you're on the 12th fret compared to the 7th fret. Like you even hear with my guitar, it's got a little better intonation lower on the fretboard, and then when I go up, it's pretty decent, but it's starting to get a little out of tune, right? You start to hear slight dissonances there. So Just keep those things in mind, especially for bass guitars as well. Bass guitars will definitely go out of tune if you fret a string too hard, or the intonation will maybe struggle past the 12th fret. So if you're recording any bass guitars, keep in mind that when you're playing the low string or something like that, you may actually need to tune the instrument slightly lower in pitch. And this is what I kind of do in general across my guitars when I'm recording. Knowing I'm gonna fret, knowing I'm gonna press down on the frets, actually will tune ever so slightly flat sometimes, especially on that low E string, because when you're fretting it, you're actually pressing down quite a bit. You're actually removing the distance there quite a bit, and it's almost actually bending the string a little bit there. So you want to keep that in mind. Like I said, for bass guitars as well, keep that in mind. And just these tiny little changes that you make with tuning, it's really going to pay dividends in the long run when you go to mix your sound, or when you layer all these guitars together. They're going to sound a lot more in tune than what you are used to, or sound a lot more in tune and professional, because out of tune recordings, unless it's a very specific context, they just tend to sound unprofessional. They tend to not sound like a finished product, and your guitar tones start to gel much more and much better together, especially when they're played in time as well. When you have that intonation and tuning figured out. And number 3, I would say mute the strings properly, or take the strings out of play that you don't need to hear during a take. Let's say that you've been tracking some stuff down here, and now it's time to track some lead stuff, and it's only on these, maybe these top 3 strings of the guitar. We'll find a piece of tape, some scotch tape, some foam, something. There's so many things out there that do this, and actually start to take some of these strings out of the play. You see fret wraps all the time. People will wrap frets around the first fret, and it just keeps you, when you're playing these lead parts up here, it keeps these strings, right, when you pull off, it keeps these strings from ringing out and causing some nasty noises. So like if you play a lead part up here and you're pulling off and things like that, no one's going to play that 100% absolutely perfectly. Put a string wrap around your first fret. It's going to dull those sounds so that when you pull off, you don't hear those open strings, which can really wreak havoc on a recording, especially if you get a good take. You don't want a ringing B string in the background completely ruining it. If you ever watched the video of 1.5 years of the life of Metallica when they're recording the Black Album, I mean, often they would record parts where Bob Rock would actually just remove the strings. He would just have like 2 strings on the guitar in general, just taking it completely out of play. And when you play and you record and you solo your guitar when you're playing leads, pay close attention. Spend some time in your home studio this week going, hey, there's a lot more string noise than I realized. Or if you're playing chuggy parts up here, you realize that, hey, these top 3 strings, they're actually making a little bit of sound, and it's just removing a little bit of clarity from the recording. Now, of course, context matters. If you're playing some garagey punk rock sound or grunge stuff or whatever you're playing, maybe you want those extra strings to ring out. Maybe that's a part of the sound. Awesome, leave it in. But if you're going for a technical guitar performance, something that's cleaner, something that's more pop or modern, you want to be aware that these things can ring out and that you may want to remove them in your recording. Use fret wraps when possible. It's not that you're cheating. It's not that you're not a good enough guitar player. Everyone does this in recording studios, and they've been doing this for a long time. I mean, Bob Rock was doing it. Guys in the 80s were doing it. So this has been going on for 30 or 40 years. This has no reflection on you as a guitar player. It's just the smart choice to help you get a great guitar take, and that's what I'm here to help you do. And the 4th thing is choose the correct guitar for the part. The guitar makes a huge difference when it comes to the sound you're gonna get on recording day. And of course, there's things that can emulate guitar sounds. I've gone over Bias FX2's guitar match. You can check that out up there. But like, this is my Jackson, but would I want to use my Jackson for a super clean jazz part? Not really. I would use my Squier. I would use a different guitar, right? If I'm recording Avenged Sevenfold style leads, I'd probably pull out my Sinister Gauge Signature, right? So find the guitar that works for the part, especially when it comes to clean parts, because guitars with a little bit more output, it's just going to dirty up the sound, and maybe that's what you want. Maybe that's a good thing. But if you want a super clean sound, try to find something like a Tele. Try to find something like a Squier that's going to be able to get that super clean sound. But of course, if you're going for super crazy shreds or chug riffs, your Squier is not going to be the best instrument for that. Try to find something with a little more pickup output. That's just going to work better for your overall sound. So I hope those tips were helpful. I also have a guide called the 5 Steps to Building the Perfect Guitar Tone. You can find that guide 100% free in the description box down below. Please leave a comment. What are some other guitar tips I didn't mention for recording? There's tons of them out there. This isn't all of them, but I'd like to hear what your tips are and what you do on recording day to help you get the best takes. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.